I want to lay out specifically this situation because there's a lot to discuss. This comes from a New York Times extraordinary investigation out this morning, said to give a brand new inside look at Facebook's purported multi-year campaign to deflect criticism and downplay issues with Russian hackers and hate speech all across the social media network. The Times says, quote, bent on growth, founder Mark Zuckerberg and COO Sheryl Sandberg ignored warning signs and then sought to conceal them from public view. At critical moments over the last 3 years, they were distracted by personal projects and passed off security and policy decisions to subordinates, according to current and former executives. Drawing on interviews with more than 50, that's 50 people, the Times says problems began way back in December 2015 when a post by then-candidate Donald Trump about a Muslim ban prompted a conversation about hate speech and whether Trump's post violated Facebook's terms of service. Well, Facebook's D.C. rep reportedly feared a conservative backlash, telling the company leadership, quote, don't poke the bear. The New York Times reports that Zuckerberg and Sandberg were basically absent from that all-important debate. Trump's post stayed up, and after that, it seemed the floodgates were wide open. By the spring of 2016, Facebook was reportedly finding signs that they were being infiltrated by Russian trolls, but they didn't disclose what they were finding. This morning, the company defended its actions at the time, but even months later, Zuckerberg famously underestimated their impact. You remember this.
Personally, I think the idea that fake news on Facebook, of which it's a very small amount of the content, influence the election in any way, I think is a pretty crazy idea.
No, it's crazy that Mark Zuckerberg would say something like that. But the role of Facebook in the election, it was under increasing scrutiny in Washington and around the country. Zuckerberg testified that Facebook's response had been too slow, and then he promptly left on a listening tour, whatever that is, for much of the summer. While that was going on, here's what the Times said was happening at Facebook. Quote, throughout the spring and summer of 2017, Facebook officials repeatedly played down Senate investigators' concerns about the company while publicly claiming there had been no Russian effort of any significance on Facebook. But inside the organization, employees were tracing more ads, pages, and groups specifically back to Russia. By August 2017, Facebook execs concluded that the situation had become what one called a 5-alarm fire, said a person familiar with all of the discussions. But publicly, the company chose to downplay the problem instead of revealing what was actually going on. When they finally did start to come clean, company leaders simultaneously engaged in an all-out year-long PR effort to discredit their critics and work the refs in Congress. The company reportedly reached out to one of its biggest congressional supporters, Democrat Chuck Schumer, to get him to lobby colleagues on Facebook's behalf. A Facebook employee told The Times that Schumer confronted one of the company's biggest critics, Senator Mark Warner, and Schumer told him to back off. We should point out that Chuck Schumer's daughter works for Facebook. Throughout all of it, The Times says Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg oversaw, quote, an aggressive lobbying campaign to combat Facebook's critics, shift public anger toward rival companies, and ward off damaging regulation. Facebook employed a Republican opposition research firm to discredit activist protesters, in part by linking them to liberal financier George Soros. It also tapped its business relationships, lobbying a Jewish civil rights group to cast some criticism of the company as anti-Semitic. Facebook said today that it did work with a PR company to look into protesters, but said that suggesting it was an anti-Semitic attack is, quote, reprehensible and untrue. Sandberg herself took the lead on damage control in September, telling Congress that Facebook's leaders are doing the best they can.
Finding the line between what is hate speech and what is misinformation is very, very difficult, especially if you're dedicated to expressing free expression. And sometimes free expression is expressing things you strongly disagree with. The fundamental view is that bad speech can often be countered by good speech. And if someone says something's not true and they say it incorrectly, someone else has the opportunity to say, actually, you're wrong, this is true. And that's what we're working on through our systems.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.